Hello and welcome to the Every Home a Safe Home, brought to you by the Merryman House Domestic Crisis Center. I'm your host today, Mary Foley, and I would just like to first thank you for taking just a little bit of your time to learn about our home, and we're going to give you an opportunity to look inside the Merryman House today and learn about what we do for the 8-county purchase region of Western Kentucky. So welcome. With us today we have two very special guests, and I'd like to welcome them right now. Amy Carter and Dawn York, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
I'd like to take just a few minutes, or for you to take just a few minutes, just to talk to the viewer about who you are and what you do at the Merryman House and how long you've been a part of the team. Amy, we'll start with you.
Okay, my name is Amy Carter. I've been with the Merryman House for 3 years now.
Okay.
I'm the Director of Residential Operations, which is just what it sounds like. I just kind of make sure the daily operations are going smoothly and handle anything that might come up.
And we're going to get into what residential operations means, because it means a whole lot.
Yes.
So Dawn, what about you?
Yes, I've been with the agency for 7 years. I've done a gamut of jobs there, but currently I'm the Director of Training and Program Support, which is not like it sounds. I take care of the in-house training for our staff, make sure they're trained to be able to do their jobs, but also do training for the community. So just like recently, another outreach advocate and I have been training folks at Graves County High School, so and volunteer recruitment and all kinds of stuff.
So it would sound to me that training is a huge component at an agency like the Merryman House, but also, gosh, to reach out to the community is certainly something that we do as well. So I'm really excited to hear about all of those services. And so this is the first program, since I've been with the Merryman House, which is just right at a year, so I'm new compared to the two of you. But I think it's important that the community understand that the Merryman House is here and what it does. And so one of the things I want to start with to kind of let the viewer know, and just to sort of lay the foundation of our time together today, is as a member of the community and even as a community partner with the Merryman House, I thought the Merryman House did this one main thing, emergency shelter for victims of domestic violence and their children. So that's what the Merryman House is. And then I came to the Merryman House and I realized, oh, but it's just a tiny piece of what the Merryman House does. So let's just start there, because I think that's where most of our viewers may be starting. So talk to me about, Amy and Dawn, you can chime in as well, since you've been with the agency so long. Talk to me about the emergency shelter. What is that, and what does that look like to the community?
Well, I'll let Dawn take this and she can.
The facility that we have for our emergency shelter portion of our program is exactly what it sounds like, but not at all what it sounds like.
Okay, how so?
We are a 24-bed shelter. We house single women and also women with children there. We do have male victims that will call in and need shelter, but we have other resources to house them in a different aspect of what we do. But it's exactly that. It's a giant kind of happy house. People are just running around. Our offices are there as well. So I tell staff a lot to be very conscious of that we work in their home. So we have a giant living quarters. We have some community areas, living room, dining room. We have outside patio. We're kind of in a secluded wooded area, so we've got that nice part of it as well.
And what about children? Is there a spot for children at the shelter?
We do. We have a child advocate on staff, but on top of that, we try to make sure that they're not left out, because so often I think that they kind of get left out in some services. So we have a playroom for them to utilize. We also have some really cool outside areas for them to be a part of. One of my goals for the future is to bring in a lot of volunteers, specifically to do some homework help and some reading groups and movie nights, and be sure that we incorporate them in those.
So basically it literally is a home that provides services to a specialized group of people in our community, which is victims of domestic violence. But while that is a specialized population, it is not a small population, and it is not some sort of anomaly. It's unfortunately extremely common. 1 in 4 women, 1 in 7 men victimized in this way. No respecter of race or ethnicity or religious background, gender, income, it makes no difference. It is certainly a huge problem. And actually the Paducah police chief was quoted as saying that domestic violence is the second largest problem for the residents of Paducah, McCracken County. So it really, I think, pushes the Merryman House into the forefront. So there's a home where people can come. We provide food and services and programming. And so I think that sort of lays the foundation that it is an emergency shelter in a home-like environment. But I would imagine that the programming piece is critical. So which one of you wants to take the programming piece of what do folks do when they come? What's our goal?
I'll take the programming piece because we've started something very new recently. It's called the phase system. Before, when clients would come to the Merryman House, there are 3 main things that they focus on, which would be their advocacy, where they have case management. And then the second thing is their wellness piece, where they would talk to an in-shelter counselor. And the third piece is the housing, where they're going to look for safe housing outside of the shelter. And those 3 components are still very important, but now we call them tracks. And we have 3 phases that the clients go through these phases and continue on these tracks, but it gives them more of a structure to go by. For instance, in phase 1, there's going to be more support on our part when they get to the shelter, and they're going to start to address their basics and identify their barriers. They're going to meet with their advocate and just go ahead and set their goals. That would be the advocacy track. Then they're going to meet with an in-shelter counselor, and that's going to be their wellness track. They're going to start with an assessment to start to identify what the effects of domestic violence have left, because they're great. And then their third piece is their housing track. Again, it's just going to be an assessment. What are your barriers? Do you need a birth certificate? That sort of thing. So support is huge in that first phase. Then,
well, I'm going to interrupt you just a second. So it sounds like to me that first phase is really that stabilization phase, figuring out what they need. Did they leave with nothing? Do they have some resources, no resources, family around, no family around? And so really just helping them get a grasp on where do we go from here?
Correct.
Okay, so then phase 2 occurs.
Right, so phase 1 might be 2 to 4 weeks depending on what their needs are.
Okay.
Then they'll move on to phase 2, and in phase 2 the accountability piece starts to come in, where they should start, their support system, they should start building that. As far as transportation, in phase 1 we do a lot more transportation for them. Come phase 2, we're going to hope that they're learning how to use the public transit, asking friends or family to help them out. So with their advocacy piece, we're continue to set goals. We'll redo those goals for the second phase. And then for the wellness piece, that's when they're going to start talking about coping skills. And then with their housing piece, they should have their documents that they need. They should have been filling out applications for local housing options. And then once that phase can last up to about 4 weeks. And so once they kind of have that stuff stabilized, then that's when they'll move on to phase 3.
And so on phase 3, it's my understanding that we're really then hoping they're at a place where they're really making those long-term plans.
Yes.
And they are strengthening both internally and externally, and now they have an opportunity to do what? What makes phase 3 unique? What's their goal there?
We want them to be maintaining what they've been working on. Self-sufficiency is a huge piece, because we don't want them just to find a place to go. We want them to find a place that's going to be a home and that they can sustain, and they can start having those healthy relationships. But also we have a piece where they give back during that phase. We like to talk to them during the phases about what their strengths are, because we all have a gift, an area that we're special in, that we can give back to others. So it gives them a chance to take what a strength is that they have and to give back to the residents, whether it's cook a meal or to do a group or a craft. That's a very special piece in the third phase.
So, you know, unfortunately, we don't have a whole lot of time to go into it any more than that, but we just launched this on April the 1st, and we've seen tremendous response from the residents. We just had a graduation, and 4 now are alumni of the Merryman House, so it's just an exciting time, and it sounds like folks really have an opportunity to heal and then to continue to move forward. Before we leave our time together today, volunteers are so important to the Merryman House, and we've just launched a new volunteer program where we are asking folks to be lifesavers, life builders, and life changers. Dawn, briefly, for viewers that might be interested, how can they be one of those 3 things?
The program is set up very similar to our donor program. So the donors are very important, but the other piece of that is volunteers to give back and to help anyway. We have a immense amount of ways that they can help, but that first stage with the lifesavers are kind of your one-time projects where I want to bring my youth group to break your leaves this weekend, or I would like to come teach a coupon class, or so there really are one-time volunteers that just have that little span of time to work. The other 2 are more extensive. They're, you know, with the life changers and the life builders, there's some training that we will do with them so that they can come help us staff our hotline, to help come do some child care, to be more long-term assistance, to maybe help with our facilities manager, to help the facility running, to run some long-term groups, to I mean, it's just it's an endless amount of stuff with the 24-hour residential program that we have. There's an immense amount of things, folding brochures all the way to, you know, like I said, staffing our care center.
Absolutely. Well, and you know, everybody has a place, everybody has a gift, and that's something that we've certainly been talking about as a staff, and so I think the same message would apply to the community. Everybody has something that they can give back. So
I even tell our high school kids, you know, when we go and speak, I say, you know, if you can color in the lines, you are a rock star at that shelter for some of those kids. So you don't have to come, you know, with these extensive educational backgrounds or these clinical skills that you need. Those are important, but that's not the only thing we're looking for. You know, I'm looking for somebody that can just say, I don't know what I can do, but I would love to be involved. So there's definitely a place for everybody.
Well, and I think that that's a perfect place for us to begin to kind of wrap up our time together, that there is a perfect place for everybody. And yes, women and children come to us in a state of crisis, and sometimes physically visible, bruises and broken bones, and sometimes scars emotionally that takes us a little bit of time to get to. But if we've got people, both staff and community support, to save, build, and change lives, then I think we get to the place where the Merryman House is not just a crisis center. We are a center that promotes life and legacy, healthy lives for these women and children to create lasting legacies for those that they love, which for us, right, is a violence-free life where every home from then forward is a safe home. So I want to thank you both for what you do and for being here with us today. We have many more shows to come as we educate the community about the services of the Merryman House, so thank you. And we would like to thank you and also invite you to stay tuned. We do have more. We are going to be learning about the outreach opportunities through the Merryman House and how folks can continue to get involved and how those that need our services can get them. So please stay with us. We'll be right back. Hello and welcome back to Every Home a Safe Home, brought to you by the Merryman House Domestic Crisis Center. I'm your host today, Mary Foley, and we've been spending some time talking about the Merryman House Domestic Crisis Center and all of the services offered to victims of domestic violence and their children, and also services offered to the community. So I'm so glad that you've been able to join us. If you are just now joining us for the second half of our program, we have just been talking about the emergency shelter offered by the Merryman House and all of the services that are provided to people who need them. And one of those services is a 24-hour crisis line, as well as the shelter itself. And so we'd love to talk with you more about that, and you'll be getting some information on how to learn about the Merryman House at the end of our program. But what we'd like to do now is turn our attention to the outreach program, which is a section of the Merryman House that many people don't know about. And so I'd like to welcome to our show today Mary Jackson and Marisa Young-White, what I'm going to call senior hitters at the Merryman House. You all have been there a while. So just introduce yourself to me, to the viewer, and tell me what you do at the Merryman House. I'll start with you, Mary.
My name is Mary Jackson, and I've been with Merryman House Domestic Crisis Center for 15 years.
Now, I don't want to just gloss over that. 15 years you've been doing this work.
Yes.
So thank you for that. What do you do at the Merryman House now?
I am the Director of Outreach Services.
Okay, and we're going to talk extensively about what that means.
My name is Marisa, and I have been with the Merryman House for 9 years now, and I am the Director of Economic Support Services.
Which is actually a new title that we have just given to you, but certainly you've been doing this work a long time as well, so I'm very excited to be able to talk to the both of you. Now, as a former community partner of the Merryman House and just as a community member, I always think Merryman House equals emergency shelter, and it does. But the more I'm out on behalf of the Merryman House, and I know when I came to the agency, I was blown away at the amount of services provided to victims in our community through the outreach program. So can you just tell me, Mary, as the director of non-residential services, what are the services offered through the outreach program?
Well, the services that the outreach provides is for a domestic violence victim that chooses not to go into shelter.
Okay.
So we offer court advocacy. We offer, of course, we talk to them about safety planning. That's a part of it. And then we offer group counseling as well as individual counseling. And we make referrals.
Now, when you say court advocacy, that's a term we kind of use in-house. What might that look like?
Say, for instance, a victim of domestic violence decide that they want protection.
Okay.
That would be an EPO.
Which stands for?
An EPO is an emergency protective order.
Okay.
And it's only good for 14 days until the victim actually goes to court for the hearing. And then, say, for instance, they need that protection, and they go to the clerk's office to fill that out. The clerks aren't able to really go into great detail with them to help them fill out the petition, so then they would call me. The clerks can refer them to me, or a lot of the clients know to get in contact with me also, and then basically what I do is just go along with them through the court system. I go to the hearing with them, explain to them what's going to take place at the hearing, and just be there for moral support.
Okay, now, there might be viewers that say, emergency protective order, how effective can a piece of paper really be? In your experience, are they effective or are they not effective?
I feel that they're very effective.
Okay.
First of all, it lets the petitioner know that at this point in time, I can take back the power that was taken from me. They're making a bold step to go out and do something about the violence that's being perpetrated upon them. It's letting that respondent know, which is the abuser, that I no longer will put up with the abuse. Excuse me. My mouth is a little dry.
No problem.
But it really helps the respondent know at this point in time that I will be held accountable for my actions.
And a lot of the research coming out of the University of Kentucky right now, there's an expert there that does a lot of research on this issue, and what we know is that those emergency protective orders are extremely effective. And so for viewers that might be watching that's something that they're interested in learning more about, I think the take-home message I hear from you is, number one, you're not alone in that process. There's somebody to walk you through it. And number two, it really can make a difference, and we know in many cases actually save lives. And so where are the offices that comprise the outreach program? Where are they located?
We have an office that's located in McCracken County.
Okay.
We have one in Marshall County. There's one in Graves County, and we also have an outreach office in Calloway County.
Okay. And so you provide a wide variety of services through that avenue. And one of the things that you mentioned was safety planning. Can you take just a few seconds on safety planning and why that's important?
Safety planning is very important because anytime there's a domestic violence situation, you really don't know when it's going to happen, so you need to be prepared. You need to know where you're going to go if when it happens again, because if it happens one time, it's going to happen again. So therefore, you need to have like important papers together, your checkbook, leases to the house, you know, all the important information that you would prepare yourself to have in one spot. If there was a fire or something, those would be the papers that you would need. The same way, if there's going to be a domestic violence situation and you have to leave all of a sudden to go to a safe place. So it's like your medicines, the records for the children, birth certificates, all those important papers, your marriage license, those things that you would have. We also go into great detail about how to keep yourself safe when you leave the home, when you're in the home. So it's very, the planning is very intense because it lets that person know that I have a plan now, and when it happens, I will feel better about just leaving, because it's very scary when something happens and you don't have a plan. You need to think about this all in advance so you won't be so terrified when it happens, because it will happen again.
And so one of the primary purposes of the outreach team, those advocates, is to talk to people about that process and to help them get there.
Yes.
So there's so much we could talk about as it relates to just outreach and court advocacy, but I want to shift the focus to another entire section of services offered by the Merryman House, and that is our Department of Economic Support. How do you come alongside to assist women coming out of shelter or just accessing us through the community?
Well, I am so excited because our department helps to remove a lot of the barriers that people face, such as housing. Housing is a huge barrier. So we offer various housing programs, as well as financial literacy classes, employment skills, and we offer programs such as individual development accounts.
Now I have to pause you right there, because again, that's a phrase that I hear, but I don't think most folks are going to know what that means. What is an individual development account?
Development account. Those are tools to help people plan for their future. It helps residents to save money, to work towards the purchase of a vehicle, to purchase a home, for post-secondary education, or to start their own small business.
So really, it sounds like we're trying to put tools into the hands of survivors that will then help them to maintain self-sufficiency and independence from that abusive relationship or that abusive person. So what kind of savings are we talking about? I mean, what types of figures can clients come away with if they work with within the program?
Well, they must save a minimum of $20 a month to begin with.
Okay.
But at the end of the program, they walk away with $4,000 total saved for the car purchase, or to use as a down payment on a vehicle. And then the other program, which is very similar, offers a 4-to-1 match, which is wonderful. And so they save $1,000 and receive matching funds of $4,000. So they have a total of $5,000 to use towards their purchase.
And now that's just the cash piece, but I mean, we're also helping them work through a curriculum on how to start their own business, or working with them on going back to school, or just a whole host of things. And talk to me just a little bit about what do we do if folks are in credit trouble or in need of credit repair, or maybe they're behind on their taxes, for example. How do we help remove those barriers?
We offer free tax preparation. They complete a curriculum before they actually make their purchase. The minimum amount of time would be 6 months, but they can stay in the program for 2 years, or actually up to 3 years, so that they're not only saving money and budgeting, but they are also receiving the education with monthly meetings and one-on-one meetings that they need.
Okay. So in terms of that economic support, you're describing that we help them literally repair their credit, save money, learn how to manage the money that they do have, if that's an area that they've struggled in. For some of these women, they've never had access to their own money. So it's not that they are somehow inept to do it, they've never been able to do it. But you also mentioned housing, and so what many people may not realize is the Merryman House has a partnership with our coalition, the Kentucky Domestic Violence Association, and we actually have 2 apartment complexes that we can move individuals in and out of. Can you take, and we've just got a short amount of time, a little bit of time to tell me about those programs?
Yes, absolutely. We have through, we call them KDVA homes, also Winterwood apartments, and we have 20 total units, 12 in Paducah and 8 units in Murray.
Wow. And so if they qualify for the program, they can have one of those units, and how long can they stay there?
It's not a time permanent. If it can be permanent if they choose, and so there's no time frame that they have to stay there for a specific amount of time. So it can be permanent housing if they choose that.
Wow. So if I take you two and sort of push you together and merge you together, on the one hand we have outreach services as it looks like emergency protection, safety planning, education about the effects of domestic violence, the fact that, just as you said with such confidence, if it happened once, it's going to happen again. So we know some things about this cycle and helping women work through that process. What is the average number of times a woman would leave a relationship and return?
Between 5 and 7 times.
Between 5 and 7 times. Each time the lethality goes up. And so that outreach team is sort of that voice of reason, right? That's helping normalize and helping them process through. At the same time, if we can get them to connect, we refer them to other community sources, resources that are available to them. But then we seem to have, as you describe, a whole host of resources on our own if we can encourage them to reach out and access those. We just have just a teeny amount of time. I just wonder, what would you say to a viewer that is watching and thinking, I am this person, I need this help, but I don't think I can do it? What would you say?
For me, I would tell them that they're not alone, whether they call us today, a week from today, 3 months to a year. We're going to be there for them for support. And no matter what they may think, that they're alone, they're not. All they have to do is pick up the phone and call the 800 number or one of the outreach offices, and we will be there to support them.
And I think we'll let it go right there. That's a perfect response, and I'm sure very similar to what you were waiting to say. You're not alone. So thank you both for being here and for the work that you do. And we'd like to thank you for joining us for the Every Home is Safe Home program, brought to you by the Merryman House Domestic Crisis Center. Our 1-800 number will be put on your screen, and there's a 24-hour crisis counselor standing by to assist you should you need it. Until the next time we see one another, we ask that you will do everything that you can to make sure every home is indeed a safe home. We'll see you next time.